Hello, everyone. I'm Bill Collins, an employee benefits consultant with Infinity Benefit Solutions, and today's presentation is about why the disability contract language is so important. And specifically, today we're going to talk about 5 really important differentiators. And with that, we'll take a look at the specific agenda. The 5 that we're going to focus on today, the contract really starts with the definition of disability, and we'll talk about the difference between the and definition and the or definition. And then we'll also talk about some limitations and exclusions. The first one will be the 40-hour work week clause, and then we'll talk about what does maximum capacity earnings mean in the contract, and then also how offsets could occur to your benefit in the event that there are third-party settlements. We're also going to talk about what does self-reported conditions mean, and then just totally coincidence that May actually is Disability Insurance Awareness Month, so appropriate that we're having this talk today. So start with the definition of disability. Essentially, the way to think about this, and this is not to make everyone an expert on disability insurance, but there's an and definition or an or definition, and the way to think about it is if I have to have, there's 2 components that come into play: an income loss being required and a duties loss being required. So the way to think about it is the tougher definition, the higher hurdle to get over, is if I have to satisfy both. So if I have to have an income loss as well as that there are duties that I'm not able to do, that's a tougher definition than if I just have to satisfy one or the other. So give you an example, income loss, it's not that tough if you're necessarily an hourly employee, because if I'm not putting the hours in, I've got a direct reduction in pay, and that's pretty easy to figure out. But it's tougher for owners of businesses, especially most businesses in our state are S corporations, and so those shareholders get income stream. Even if they're totally disabled, they could still get their revenue that comes from the prior year earnings. So that could make it tough. And it's also tough for executives who may not necessarily discontinue their salary just because of the onset of disability. Duties lost then, and there too. So if I'm an hourly worker, it might not be that tough. But there's a lot of disabilities that come into play, and most are partial disabilities where I didn't necessarily lose a duty, so I could still do everything I was doing before, but maybe I just can't do it for a full day. So maybe I can do what I was doing from 9 to noon, and then my doctor says that I can't put in any more time after that. So the point just being, and this is something that the benefit consultant reviews when we're evaluating plans, and we would share with the client. So again, not that you have to be an expert on this, but just to know, so you know what we're looking for when we are evaluating the qualities of a disability contract. Next thing is the 40-hour work week clause. So this is just one of many limitations that may or may not be in certain plans, but I bring it up because it seems like we're seeing this come into play more often, especially over the past several years, where it seems like we're really asking a lot of our employees to do more with less. So they're wearing more hats. The job titles don't mean what they used to. You know, human resource director is doing 3 or 4 different things that didn't used to fall into that bucket. The CFO is doing the same thing. The CEO may even be doing that as well. And so what we found is that a lot of people are really not getting their job done in the 40-hour work week. It's taking them more like 50 or 60 hours. So they're starting earlier in the day, or they're working into the evening, or they're putting in time on a Saturday morning. And so the problem with this limitation is what some insurance carriers have done, and again, not all, but we watch for this, is that they'll say, once you have the ability to work 40 hours a week, you no longer meet the definition of disability. So that could be tough if I was used to working 50, 55 hours and then I was out and now I'm slowly coming back to work and I get back up to 40 hours a week, even though that really is not fully putting me where I needed to be to generate the work that I did before. I technically won't qualify to receive a claim anymore, even if I had a duties loss, even if I have an income loss. So this is one of the limitations that we watch for to see if it's in a contract. And we're looking for these types of things in advance so that we don't have surprises at claim time. Similarly, maximum capacity earnings, this is also a limitation that came on the scene several years ago. And what this is talking about is the concern here is it gives a lot of discretion to the insurance carrier. So it essentially says that if we don't think you're working to your maximum capacity, we're going to adjust your benefit to where we think it should be if you were doing as much as you possibly could. So the key there is that the carrier has a lot of control. So let's say, for example, I'm back to work now and I'm working trying to get back up to full time. I'm doing 3 days a week, but the insurance carrier comes back and says, our medical director says that based on your diagnosis and your age and your gender and your occupation, you really should be back at 4 days a week. We're not sure why you're only doing 3, but we're going to offset your claim as though you were putting in 4 days. So again, if you look 20 years ago, this language didn't even exist. These are just things that have kind of crept into the contracts over time and that, again, that we're watching for as we're making plan selections for our clients. Third-party offset. So this is super common. You think about it, a lot of times the disability is due to an accident, might be an auto accident, and sometimes a year or two down the road, a lawsuit is settled and the agreement has been made. All parties agree of what the compensation is going to be, and it's normally delivered in a lump sum. So this third-party offset is really critical because often when the claimant is working with their attorney, they're saying, okay, so I'm not putting as much money into my 401k. I'm not saving as much for my kids' college. I have unpaid medical bills, but I do have this disability benefit coming in. And so then they arrive at some lump sum that's going to make that individual whole. Problem is that some disability contracts have a provision that says we offset for that third party settlement. So in other words, you get a bunch of money, they're going to say, well, that's really the equivalent of several years of us paying you a benefit. As a result, we're not going to pay you that benefit for several years until the equivalent of your benefit would have been met. So it's a lot of times a shock to the attorney, to the claimant, to everyone involved that provision exists. And so, again, that's why in advance of us making a recommendation or presenting a contract to one of our clients, that we're going to look for this type of limitation or exclusion. And next one is self-reported. Some insurance carriers call it the special conditions limitation. So this one's really important because it actually accounts for a third of all claims that come in under disability contracts. So it comes into play quite often. Key here is that if you have a special condition, they limit it to either a 12 or more commonly a 24-month benefit. So kind of like similar to what most carriers would do for mental nervous disorders or substance abuse related disabilities. But this is, if you think about things like fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome, musculoskeletal and connective tissue disorders. So that means like strains and sprains of the back or the neck. So they're essentially things that are going to cause me to be disabled, but they don't really show up on a film or an x-ray like a lot of other conditions would. And so essentially the insurance carrier is saying, you presented this diagnosis, your physician says that this is what you have and you're being treated for, and that's great, but you can't prove it, so we're just going to pay you for either the 12 or the 24 months. And that often is going to come as a shock to the claimant, who may not even be working for that employer anymore. And so a lot of times the employer never even hears about that. So the key, again, and there's probably 20 different limitations or exclusions that we look for. Those were the big ones that we see come into play in real life claims. But the advantage that we really have at Infinity is that we have access to all the carriers that are out there, so we can make the best recommendation for our clients. And then in addition, we have access to Northwestern Mutual Disability, which is exclusive to us because they don't allow brokerage. So we have exclusive access to Northwestern Mutual for the scenarios where that makes the best sense. So that's why you won't always see us show just a spreadsheet, but we're also going to talk about the value of the contract. How do you get the best bang for your buck? Selecting the plan that is most appropriate for you and your employees. So that's really the key and the focus for the talk today. Remember, it's Disability Awareness Month. Celebrate. May is not just Mother's Day and Memorial Day. We've got Disability Insurance Awareness Month as well. I do want to refer you to, this is an impartial website, the disabilitycanhappen.org. They gather data from all the insurance carriers. They have really good information and a great resource. So, and being Disability Awareness Month, they've got big promotions going on. All their reports are up to date. So hopefully you'll find that valuable. But as always, any questions that come up on the group disability or any other employee benefits that we are working with you on, please feel free to reach out to us. My information is listed below, and I hope that you found this presentation to be helpful. Thanks for joining.